and welcome to the EssayEdge writing course for MBA admissions essays. In today's lesson, the first of 5, we're going to walk you through some of the very first steps you should take when preparing to write an admissions essay of this type. Much of this information involves better understanding the task at hand and the audience you're going to be writing for, so it'll be most helpful if you watch it before you're ready to write. By taking the time to prepare, you'll give yourself the best possible chance of success when the time comes to put words on a page. Upon completing this lesson, you should understand who admissions committees at MBA programs are and why they value your admissions essays, the role admissions essays play in the MBA admissions process, how to begin thinking about the content you plan to include in your admissions essays. So you're applying to an MBA program. Congratulations! You've obviously accomplished quite a bit already. But just because you finished your undergraduate education, built work experience, and decided to apply doesn't mean that things get easier from here. Applying to an MBA program is a complicated process. From transcripts to recommendations to your admissions essays, there are many things that you need to complete before your application is complete. And each aspect of the application is important in its own unique way. Your essays serve a vital purpose within the context of your overall application. Specifically, they're your chance to speak directly to the admissions officer who reads your application. Thus, it's important to understand who those admissions officers are and how you can make a strong, positive impression on them. With that said, who's going to be reading your MBA admissions essays? The simple answer is a committee of admissions professionals who are looking to craft a well-balanced, diverse, and accomplished incoming class. MBA programs take particular pride in the statistics and accomplishments of their incoming class, and their admissions officers thus go to impressive lengths to get to know prospective applicants. Because things like business experience and accomplishments are weighed so heavily, and because it can be difficult to highlight these things anywhere besides an essay, your essays are of particular importance to the admissions committee. In addition, most MBA applicants often have a chance to meet a member of the admissions committee firsthand in an interview. Thus, your essays often serve as an inspiration for the conversations you will have then. You should make sure and write on topics that you can address and elaborate on later during your interviews. Admissions committees at MBA programs are ultimately looking for 2 things when they read your admissions essays. First off, they want to get to know you on a more intimate level, beyond what quantitative information like grades and test scores can show. And secondly, they want to understand what you consider some of your most important work experiences to date. The old adage may say that numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth either. Otherwise, admissions decisions would be easy. You'd simply take the applicants with the highest grades and scores. That's not the way things are done, though, as numbers can't effectively capture everything that's important about an applicant. This is particularly true for MBA applicants, since a large part of your application will be based on your work history and experience. Thus, you need to be able to show what you've gained and accomplished during your time in the workforce. Unlike school, you didn't receive any sort of transcript that summarized your work history. Sure, you can seek recommendations from coworkers and briefly describe the things on your resume, but that doesn't really give you a chance to tell the admissions committee what you've actually done and why it makes you a good candidate for an MBA program. That's where the admissions essays come in. Admissions essays allow you to provide a more intimate glimpse into your life. For MBA programs, they offer an opportunity for you to explain what drew you to the line of work you've built experience in, how you've gained expertise in that field, and how you intend to further your career moving forward. Equally important, through compelling essays you can help the admissions representative come to better understand who you are as a person. An admissions essay will succeed if it leaves the reader feeling like he or she has formed a personal connection with you. If a reader finishes an essay with such a feeling, he or she is much more likely to actively support your candidacy. While this part of your application would seem to be the most original, others may share your GPA and GMAT scores, but nobody will write the exact same essay as you. Many applicants end up writing essays that are remarkably similar to those crafted by their peers. Because everyone spends time, money, and effort trying to make their application as strong as possible, many applicants read the exact same advice about how to write a great essay. This can cause applicants to write essays based on some proven formula, which almost inevitably leads to the creation of a formulaic, cliched, run-of-the-mill essay. To avoid this, we encourage you to approach the essay writing process with an open mind. Think about your audience, your past, and your future, and then take the time to turn those thoughts into a compelling work. Now, throughout the rest of this course, we're going to provide you with some general guidance and frameworks, but we're never going to tell you what specifically you should write about or how you have to present that information. And the reason for that is simply that those answers will be different for every single applicant. What works for one person probably won't work for another. So take your time, don't stress, and have fun with the process. And remember, your essay doesn't need to make you seem better than everybody else. It just needs to make you stand out. The applications for MBA programs are unique in that instead of asking you to write one large essay, there are usually 4 to 6 essay prompts. And unlike other schools that will ask you to write on 1 or 2 of those prompts, MBA admissions committees want you to answer all of the questions, or at least most of them. So get ready to write quite a few essays. Because of this variety, it's impossible to say exactly what prompts you're going to be writing on. So rather than try to look at all of them, we're going to examine some of the most common types of essay prompts found on MBA applications. Why this school? Prompts of this type are relatively common and are looking to see whether you can eloquently describe why you will be a good fit at a particular institution. These prompts aren't trying to see if you match the description of an ideal or average student at that school. Instead, you should view them as an opportunity to show that you are familiar with the school and have a clear reason for thinking that you could do well there. When facing a prompt like this, make sure you take time to carefully plan an answer. You want to avoid regurgitating information that's already presented on the school's website, such as average class size or faculty-to-student ratio, since admissions officers are intimately familiar with that data. To really impress them, you need to dig a bit deeper. Try to find at least one particular aspect of that school that you believe really matches something about you, and then explain that fit in your essay. This may be a faculty member, a class or learning method, scheduling option, or any number of other things. By digging beyond the basics, you'll make your essay much more compelling. Also, don't forget to explain how that aspect of this program connects to you. Saying, "I want to go to your school because of X," technically answers the question. But saying, "I want to go to your school because of X," which perfectly matches this element of me, is much more effective. Why do you need an MBA now? Another common prompt, this one wants to see if you can give a clear reason for seeking an MBA at this point in your life. The most common mistake made when responding to this prompt is to simply list your qualifications and say that you have the necessary education and work experience. Doing so often makes it sound like you're pursuing an MBA simply because you happen to have the necessary qualifications. It's kind of like being asked why you're baking a cake and responding, "Well, I had some flour, sugar, and eggs, so I figured why not?" Instead of saying that you're qualified, focus on explaining how an MBA will enable you to take the next step in your career. It's fine to say that you feel you're qualified now, but be sure to complement such a statement with a detailed explanation of what an MBA will allow you to do that you can't do right now. In addition, you might want to even note a particular deficiency in your skill set, and then show how an MBA is the best or only way for you to fill that gap and prepare for the next step in your career. What are your career goals and plans, both short and long term? This is a tricky prompt, since it's difficult to find a balance between a goal statement that is too vague and one that is too detailed. Some applicants focus on goals that are vague. What often happens then is that their goals sound cliched, since they're applicable to a huge number of people. If you talk about your plans to become a business leader, make the world a better place, or maximize profits, you will disappear into the crowd. If, on the other hand, you sketch out a year-by-year plan for the remainder of your career, you'll often come across as unrealistic, or worse, pompous. To ace this essay question, strike a balance between those two extremes. When discussing short-term goals, usually defined as within the next 5 years or so, talk about where you want to be both professionally and personally. Focus on what you'll accomplish by earning your MBA and how those skills in particular will enable you to progress. For long-term goals, be ambitious but don't be unrealistic. If your goal is to become the CEO of Microsoft or some other such company, it's usually best to find a way to put that in a more generalized context. Emphasize that you are motivated to move up the corporate leadership ladder in a technology-based company, and that you are committed to attaining a position where you will be able to make decisions that direct the company's future. You can then say that you are particularly interested in advancing within Company X. If you make your point in this order, your point will be more compelling because your goal will have justification behind it, along with a broader base of possibility. Describe a challenge and how you overcame it. Talking about challenges can be, well, a real challenge for many applicants. After all, when you're filling out an application and trying to paint yourself in a positive light to an admissions committee, it can be difficult to admit that you struggled with something. Discussing a failure, which is the next prompt we'll examine, can be even tougher. When thinking about which challenge to write on, many applicants choose something relatively superficial. I think this is because they want to seem like they're capable of handling anything, and that this challenge was only a minor blip. In addition, they write about the challenge in an extreme nuts and bolts fashion. Here's what happened, here's how I overcame it. The purpose of this prompt, though, is to see if you can accurately and honestly assess yourself, and to see how you handle adversity. As a result, you want your story to not only describe the challenge and your solution, but also give the reader a deeper understanding of you. To do this, you're going to need to color your story with some reflective comments that show what you were thinking during that challenge, and how your unique personality shaped your response. At the end of your essay, you should be more concerned with the reader understanding how you handle challenges than understanding the details of this particular situation. Describe a time when you failed and what you learned. Like essays that discuss challenges, essays discussing failure do not come naturally to most MBA applicants. Most are used to constantly painting themselves in the best possible light, and not to focusing on mistakes and failures. That's one of the reasons that AdComs ask this question. They want to see whether applicants are capable of doing this important exercise, which is vital to business success. When writing about a failure, the most important thing is to be 100% honest. Don't try and minimize the scope of the failure or to shirk blame. In addition, don't write about some failure that was really a triumph or success. You need to talk about some situation in which you clearly failed, admit that failure, and ideally explain why it happened. Just as important, if not more so, is your assessment of that situation, particularly what you learned from it. While you want to avoid cliches like learning from my mistakes, you still want to describe how this failure helped you grow in some way. Maybe it motivated you to strengthen a personal weakness. Maybe it convinced you of the importance of teamwork. Or maybe it helped you realize that a particular job or field was not a good fit for you. Whatever it was, show the admissions committee that you have handled failure to this point in your career, and that because of that, you're prepared to do so again in the future. There are few things that MBA applicants and applications alike enjoy discussing more than leadership. Since it's so closely related to success in the business field, this is unsurprising. But a surprising number of applicants respond to prompts of this type in fairly boring, uninspiring ways. It's not enough to simply share a story of a time when you were a leader. Instead, you have to convince the reader, through this story, that you were a leader in all situations, not just in this one instance. How did you demonstrate leadership? How is your leadership style unique, and what caused it to become that way? How has your leadership helped you, and how will it continue to help you? Answering questions of this sort will make your response stand out and lead the reader to a deeper understanding of your overall leadership abilities. Describe the career accomplishment you are most proud of. Prompts of this type are not asking you to simply brag about yourself. Instead, they exist to gauge what you consider valuable and worthwhile. Asking you to share which career accomplishment you are most proud of is not the same as asking you to share which career accomplishment you think is most impressive. To help you better understand this, let's say that you launched an advertising campaign that increased sales at your firm by 200% in a single quarter. That's definitely an impressive accomplishment, and one that most people would be quite proud of. But what if you had also launched a charity initiative through which many of your fellow employees began volunteering at a local community center? Which accomplishment would you be most proud of? Well, you could easily write compelling essays about either of these accomplishments, and countless others, both larger and smaller. The question is not which is better, but which you feel most proud of. If your firm had been struggling financially and your ad campaign provided a desperately needed spark, you would likely write about the first accomplishment. If your firm was already on sound financial footing and your charity initiative caused a substantial shift in corporate culture, maybe you'd instead write about the second. Whatever your particular situation is, don't worry about writing on the most impressive accomplishment. Write on the one that you're most proud of. What will you contribute to this program? My suggestion for this prompt is short and sweet. Be honest and be personal. Remember, MBA programs are full of elite, accomplished scholars and business people. You're probably not going to be the smartest or most experienced one there, so you shouldn't try to play up those aspects of yourself. Likewise, you're not going to be the most hardworking or studious one, nor will you be the best team player or most inspiring leader. What you will be is you. So ask yourself, what makes you unique, and how that trait will enable you to enrich your program. Describe an ethical dilemma and how you handled it. This question has seen a tremendous jump in popularity in recent years, as the importance of business ethics has continued to grow. My suggestion for tackling a question like this is identical to my suggestion for tackling a question that asks about a challenge you overcame, since this is essentially a more focused version of that same question. As you respond to this prompt, focus on showcasing your personal belief in the importance of business ethics. So what should you write about? Unfortunately, this question doesn't have an easy answer. It differs for every individual based on their unique set of experiences and goals for the future. While I can't tell you what to write about, I can provide some guidance that will help you pick the best content for your unique case. When writing an MBA admissions essay, one of the biggest questions I get asked is what the author should include and what can be left out. A common misconception is that every single piece of content in an essay of this sort has to focus on nothing but business accomplishments. That's simply not true. An essay that single-minded won't flow well, nor will it make an impression on the reader. You're much better off telling some stories. Many of the most effective and compelling MBA essays are created when the author builds the piece around anecdotes, stories about things that have happened to them in the past. MBA essay prompts are ideal in this regard, as they often specifically ask you to describe a situation from your past. As you respond to prompts of this sort, remember that it's equally important to connect the story to you and explain why the story is important, telling, and applicable to your overall plans and goals. Don't just tell a story for storytelling's sake. Your story needs to connect to your overall motivations and plans. In addition to telling a story, avoid getting bogged down by trying to mention every single thing you think is important from your past. You've certainly done a lot already, and there's simply no way you can cram it all into your set of essays. The sooner you accept that, the easier time you'll have with the writing process. Rather than trying to fit everything in, spend some time listing what you consider the most important elements from your professional career to this point, and ranking them as best you can. Also consider whether any of those elements will be covered elsewhere in your application, and whether they can be left out of the essays or simply mentioned in passing. Once you've done this, you can build your essays around the most important items on your list. As you brainstorm and ultimately write, keep the overall purpose of these essays in mind. And what is that purpose? Simple. To give the reader a better, more personal understanding of who you are as a person, business person, and applicant. And lastly, remember to be personal and honest. Don't try to blend in or make yourself into someone that you think the admissions committee wants you to be. Your individuality is one of your greatest strengths as an applicant, and you should be trying to play it up, not hide it. Otherwise, your application won't stand out.